Yeah, Real Sounds of Africa to once again kick off our World Football phone-in. And tonight we're talking football in Europe and South America with Mina Riziki, the Colonel, and Tim Vickery, the legend. Dino, good morning to you both.
Good morning, how are you?
Good morning.
Well,
I kind of
thanks
lost
very
my
much.
voice.
Oh, it's very kind of you to ask how I am, Mina. You always do that. You're very well brought up and you're, a real lady, if I might say so.
Thank you for that.
The other bloke, oh, goodness, needs a lot to
And
learn.
he's told you so many times.
I know,
Tim,
don't worry,
just
don't worry.
ask him.
Don't worry.
You kip if you want to. Dessicam is not for kipping.
Yeah, indeed. That's very good to start off with. 0808590.
That's better than how are you, isn't it? That's bland, isn't it? How are you? How are you doing? Hope everything's all right. Take care now, won't you?
At least she asks, Mr. Vickery. Anyway, we need to call. We need
You
you
haven't
to
commented
call
on my
us.
voice.
No, it sounds fine. Sounds
Does
fine.
it?
Yeah, it
Oh,
sounds.
I'm glad. Okay.
Yeah, no, it sounds fine. It sounds fine. It's it gives a bit of resonance to the.
Yeah, a bit of Croker's, bit of kind of Kim Carnes, Betty Davis eyes in that one, I think.
Yeah, I like that. I like.
Is it?
yeah,
Oh,
why
it's
not? Why not?
nice. Cool.
Why not?
Okay.
So 08085909693 is the number to call if you'd like to join in this morning's phone in. 08085909693. Calls are free from mobiles and landlines. You can text 85058. Text are charged at your standard message rate. You can email up all night at bbc.co.uk. And we are on @5Live on social media, amongst other things. So lots to talk about. Lots of international games happening, amongst other things. I'm also asking listeners if they can come up with any political or football analogies to go with the election last night, or, if you prefer, political analogies to go with the football as well, because one of our listeners did tweet earlier that last night's elections, to give it a football analogy or to give it football parlance, you would say that Theresa May was expecting to get a 4 or 5-0 victory, and at 3-0 she kicked back and relaxed and was lucky to scrape through a 3-2 victory at the end of it. I thought that was quite good. So if anybody else has got any, yeah, it's not bad, is it? Although there have been others, like own goals and things like that are featured amongst other things. If anybody else has got a footballing analogy to go with the election last night, then do feel free to text me on 85058. It's a great question to kick off with, though. Ask Mina, and this is from John. Ask Mina, is it true that only Welsh can wear a number 9 for Juventus in memory of Il Gigante Buono? Others wear upside-down 6s. Is that true?
Oh, John Charles. Voted the best foreigner in 1997 by Juventus fans. No, it's not true.
It's not true?
As in, players wear the number 9 shirt. Alvaro Morata wore the number 9 shirt.
But is it a
it's
6
not the
upside down?
6.
Are you sure? How do you know it's
You're
not
making
an
me
upside-down
doubt
6?
myself.
Yeah, how do you know it's not an upside-down 6? Anyway, so
Yeah,
it's
but
not
then that's
true.
like saying, okay, we're going to retire the number 10 shirt, then, Del Piero wore, and then we're going to make it 01. No, hold on. Yeah, upside down.
Yeah. Okay, we'll leave that one to one side, so it's not true.
At the end of the day, a 9 is an upside down 6 anyway.
6,
Isn't it?
anyway.
It kind of is, but some 9s might. Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah. Okay, that's a shame, because I thought that would have been a good tribute to John Charles if that was true. It would have been a great tribute.
It is nice, but to retire a number as important as 9,
Yeah.
you'd have to. I mean, he was a great player, don't get me wrong, and he's a legend, and like I said, voted by the fans as the best foreign player in 97. But I if you're not going to retire, I don't know, Totti's shirt if you're a Roma fan, or
So
I don't know.
That's 3 minutes into the phone-in, and the great Totti's been mentioned already. Not bad,
Oh,
not bad.
sorry.
Just a little dig already. Dig at him. Leave him
No,
alone.
I'm actually saying nice stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Tim,
Yeah,
Duval.
you're just happy he's retired.
Kind of. Although his
They
emotional
shoot horses,
speech-
don't they?
Oh, it really upset me actually when he admitted he was scared to retire. I was like, oh, finally we hear the truth, and it was nice to hear.
Let's speak to Karim in London. Good morning, Karim.
Hi, good morning.
You all right?
Yeah, I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, very well. Go ahead. You're through to the Colonel and the legend, Dino.
Hi, guys. I've got a question for Mina. I've been reading online about Mohamed Salah's potential move to Liverpool. And I was wondering what you think about that, whether it would be beneficial for him to return to the Premier League. I'm Egyptian, so I've been following his career for years. I want what's best for him, what's best for the Egyptian national team, really.
I don't know if you follow me on Twitter, but if you do, I did this thing where I spoke about Mo Salah on for 5 Live just the other day, and I seem to have upset a lot of Liverpool fans about it who weren't very keen on what I thought of him. I think he's an excellent player, and he is still very young, very technical, and he's been so vital to Roma's game plan, and really he's contributed so much in terms of goals, in terms of assists. He has so much pace on him, so much technique. I'll be honest, if I'm Liverpool, he's not necessarily the player that I would go for. Not because I don't think he's talented, but for me, and I said this, I find him to be a lot like Juan Cuadrado. And why I say that is because he's very much the kind of player that for me seems to run and then sort of look second, you know? And when you're under a lot of pressure and you have to make a snap decision, he's not necessarily the guy who's gifted with the mind that will make that right decision always at the right time. So on that level, I'm not that keen on him. Do I think that he's technical? Do I think he's got talent? Absolutely. And of course, his stats back up a lot of what people think of him, that he is one of those guys. But he didn't cut it at Chelsea. And he moved to Serie A, and he made a difference largely because he's a vertical player in a game, in an Italian game that many times is often referred to as a slow game. So when you have that vertical guy that can run really quickly, he will make the difference against Italian defenses. And he can do so for Liverpool as well if should he move there, or should he move to any team really in Premier League, because he'll be offered a lot more space. Italians organize very well at the back, and they are defensive, and sometimes they're not given the space, so he cannot penetrate effectively as much as he likes to. So on that occasion, I think that he can do something different in the Premier League. But again, I think that he needs to develop a lot more. I think that his vision needs to be a little bit better. But do I think he's the best that Egypt has created in a while? Absolutely, you know, and he's definitely one of the guys that everyone in Italy rates highly. But like I said, if he was a winger who had the vision as well as all the other technical abilities that he does have, frankly, he'd be playing for Barcelona and Real Madrid. He wouldn't be a guy who's being shuttled around between Serie A sides and going back and forth perhaps to the Premier League. So that's my only thing, and it turned into a huge thing, so I kind of don't like giving my opinion on him anymore.
Okay, thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Karim. Thank you for not having a pop at Mina for giving her opinion. As I think she's suffered enough slings and arrows for giving her opinion on that. This one, Tim, is from Alan. And you know it's going to be a great question, don't you, when the email starts off, 12-year listener, first-time contributor. Because you know, he's been saving it up. He's been waiting for the optimum moment, and now he's got the question. After living in Buenos Aires for 10 years, last week I finally got the chance to go to the Bombonera to see Boca versus Independiente. It's virtually impossible to get a ticket, but I got a corporate invite. I have to agree with Tim that the atmosphere was unique, in fact, undescribable. Also, the best player by a country mile was Fabra, who Tim has praised before. I'm privileged to have seen the great Bobby Moore many times live in the 60s. Wow. Some of Fabra's play was Mooresque in parts. Might I ask Tim, why has no European clubs come in for him so far?
He's a Colombian. He's a left back. The comparison with Bobby Moore floors me a little bit, and he's very quick, and there is a little bit of class about him. But I tend to the view that European scouts, for whatever reason, they're reluctant to look at Colombia. There are so many good players coming out of Colombia. A lot of them get lost along the way, and perhaps they don't always have the necessary discipline for the top level. In fact, over the years, Argentine football has been a great finishing school for Colombian talent. It's kind of toughened them up a little bit. But there are a lot. There's another one who I really like, a defensive midfielder, Colombian at Boca, Wilmar Barrios, who reminds me of a young Mascherano. And I was been raving about him on the show when he was playing for Tolima. You know, he's the kind of guy who, if he steps on a nail, that nail is going to be flattened. You know, he's you wouldn't mess with him. Not a little guy, but you wouldn't mess with him. And you're thinking, well, why didn't the European club see this? Why did Boca see this and bring him in? Yerry Mina, giant centre-back playing for Palmeiras in Brazil. And he was great for like a couple of years in Colombian football, in international club competitions as well. Giant centre-back who just dominates. You're thinking, you know, why? I remember speaking to someone with links to the club that he used to play for in Colombia, Santa Fe, saying that, you know, this is a couple of years ago when he was still playing there, that you could have him for like $1 million. And now, you know, there's talk of Barcelona paying an absolute fortune for him. And you think, well, they've got so many links in Brazil and in Argentina, the European clubs and their scouting network. But for some reason, Colombia, they tend to overlook a little bit. I think Fabra is not the greatest from a defensive point of view. He needs to tighten up there if he's going to really make it as an absolute top-class left-back. But he does have a lot of virtues. I mean, Colombia played Spain this week in a friendly, and they're still playing Pablo Armero at left back, who had a time in Italy and time at West Ham, really. And he's in Brazil at the moment. But I think he's gone top level, Armero. I just can't see him still being a player at top level. I'm not sure he's quite fit enough. So that place, Colombia left back, that really should be up for grabs. And Fabra should be absolutely demanding that place with good, consistent displays, both going forward and defensively week after week. I think he's got the talent to do it, and he'll disappoint me if he doesn't.
Yeah, Anna's got a supplementary email question for you. Not quite a sub-question, but a supplementary email question, which is another way of saying a sub-question. Ask Tim to explain how the exec boxes at Boca are at 90 degrees with the touchline. Really?
Yeah. It's a strange ground, really. And one of the reasons that it is special is, and it's called the Bombonera, which means the chocolate box, which is like a nickname which has stuck, because it just goes straight up. You know, it's one level on top of another level on top of another level. You know, so everyone is close to the pitch. Which means that there's not a lot of wiggle room, there's not a lot of breathing space. It also means that the future of the ground is under threat, really. I mean, it should have been made all-seater. They've managed to stall that one, but if it does become all-seater, the capacity is will be little more than 30,000, and it's already, and as Alan said, with the difficulty that he had getting a ticket, it's already way too small. So there's one of three things that they could do, and number one, which would be an absolute tragedy, which I don't think will happen, or at one stage it looked like it might, is move out of the Boca neighbourhood, which would be a tragedy. You know, the club is so identified with that working class Docklands environment, so that would be option number one. Move out of the neighbourhood to a bigger stadium. Don't like that one. Number two is buy land, try to find land and build a new stadium in the Boca neighbourhood. And number three is do up the existing stadium if it can be done up. There are plans to try and do it up, and they've been buying land just around the stadium. So maybe that they can even do something a little bit like what Tottenham are doing. You know, where you build a stadium more or less on the site of your original stadium, and that way you keep some of your original identity while having a bigger capacity. But it's a dilemma, and Boca will have to confront this sooner or later, because I don't really think, for all its magic, I don't think that the way it is sustainable in the long term.
Yeah, this is from Donal, who says, for her royal KFC-ness, is Belotti good enough to replace Zlatan at United, and why would you go for him as a number 9 ahead of Marcus Rashford?
firstly, no one's good enough to replace Zlatan Ibrahimovic. He is, for me, one of the best strikers, and still is, despite the new generation, despite his age, and even if he's injured, for me, he's brilliant. So is Belotti good enough to replace him? No, of course not, but very few people are. But I do think he's good enough to replace Rashford. So Rashford's got so much talent, and I think that he's the perfect player for the Premier League. And I really do genuinely, he's one of the few youngsters that I really like watching play the game. The difference with bringing Belotti in is that he's the kind of guy who can score from every part of his body. You know, he can score with his right foot, which is his stronger foot. He can score with his left foot, with a header. He somehow creates his own chances. He doesn't even need someone to sit there and afford him all these great opportunities. He can just solve tough situations when he really wants to. But he's the kind of guy that kind of really lives off that ambition and drive, and he needs to constantly be motivated, and he has been for the large part. But if he has been distracted, he is really worthless without that ambition. He's the kind of guy where it's all about emotions, and he is a born winner. If you give him the ball and you tell him, you better show me that you're good enough, he will show you he's good enough. And he will find a solution to any problem he encounters and any obstacle on the pitch. And for so many, like, Fabio Capello is just amazed by him. And I think Capello is a great judge of character and a great judge of talent. Torino have obviously put it's more like an anti-Juve clause than anything else, but 100 million basically clause to say, if you want this guy, then you have to pay us a lot of money because he is the future of the Italian national team. But right now, we were talking about this. I don't think that there are that many great strikers. And if you are Manchester United and you are looking around, obviously Morata is probably the guy that I would go for. But other than that, why? And Rashford is young, but I'm not entirely sure he can score from any situation, and whether or not he can be the guy that can lead the front line. Just based on experience alone, he's still very young, and it's still a very big club. So I would bring in Belotti if, I can't really think of better alternatives, if I'm honest.
Tim, what do you think of Belotti?
Well, I don't know him particularly well, but I saw him in the week playing for Italy against Uruguay. When he only played first half, but I thought his movement was very, very impressive, and he gave Uruguay real problems with his movement, his diagonal movement behind their defensive line. That was a problem for him. So he looks like one of those people who can, as Mina said, who can just create things. Who you always know he's there. He's never going to be that type of forward who disappears. So, it's very early stages of my relationship with Signor Belotti, but I like what I saw.
But he's not been as good since he left the goodies, has he? It's time for...
He seems to have grown a little bit as well,
Yeah.
I love the Greece love.
08085 909 693 if you'd like to join us for this morning's World Football Phony. We're talking football in Europe and South America and players from over there playing in our leagues. Do give us a call and, join in the conversation with the Colonel, who is Mina Riziki, taking care of any questions you've got in European football and players from over there playing in our leagues, and the Legendino, who is Tim Vickery, answering your questions on South American football as well. This for you, Mina, from John. Andorra beating Hungary with only 44 passes. How?
Wow, that's a difficult one.
Yeah.
Andorra beat Hungary. It was quite a bit of a shock, to be honest. I think this is like their 5th or 6th ever win, but I cannot tell you too much about it. I didn't watch the game, and it was quite a shock, but evidently they were the most accurate passes. Sorry.
That's a good answer. That is a good answer, actually. Even if you hadn't watched the game, you can answer it like that as well. Why not? This for you, Tim, and this is coming from, I can't see which listener it is, but it says, what do you think of the South American invasion that Pedro, is it Caixinha is doing with Rangers, i.e. Bruno Alves, Alfredo Morelos, Carlos Pena, Eduardo Herrera and Javier Albiela? Do you think they are...
Some of these are Mexicans.
Okay.
Gullit Peña, I have seen. His side played in the Libertadores one year. Mexican sides are no longer in it, but that's 2 or 3 years ago now. But he looked very, very impressive. Gullit Peña, Carlos Peña. He called Gullit because he looks a little bit like Ruud Gullit, and he's got a box-to-box engine and a little bit of class about him. I like him. Morelos is a Colombian striker who. Looks like they're trying to bring in, who I saw very little of, but I did see him, and he played for Colombia at under 20 level 2.5 years ago, and really didn't impress at all. Didn't see anything in him at all, and he only just played a handful of games in Colombia before heading to Finland. Whether he's matured there and picked up, and it's always useful, I suppose, if you're buying someone who's been able to adapt to life in Finland, because you don't have to go through that. The estrangement of bringing him straight over from Colombia. But the player I saw, admittedly I saw little of him, but I saw 7 or so games at under 20 level, and he didn't really show me very much.
Okay, I've been asking for football analogies for the election last night. Cross in the box, says Carl in Wakefield, and this is one that we all like here. John in Oxbridge says, my friend said that Labour were a bit Spursy. They done good, but not good enough. Do you know what I mean, Tim? Anyway, Ollie from Bristol, does that hurt, Tim?
No, not at all.
Okay,
not
good.
You just want to be represented.
Yeah, good. Yeah, you've been repped. You've been repped. Ollie in Bristol wants to know from both of you about the best piece of individual magic that you've ever seen in an international game in your respective regions. Tim, do you want to go first?
Well, yeah, one instantly comes to mind, a little bit from the source, because I didn't really expect it from him. It's a player called Leandro Damião, who's a centre forward, who at one time I had high hopes of. I should have listened to Mina. He was top scorer in the London Olympics, Brazilian centre forward. And I thought there was something there. He kept on being linked to Tottenham, and it didn't happen. And probably just as well. And he's gone from club to club to club, and he's never really been needed anywhere. At the moment, he's just on the bench with Flamengo, and it's never come off for him. But anyway, he looked like a bright spark for a while. And I saw him playing for Brazil against Argentina, and this was in a game where there were only locally based players, so it was only Brazilians who play in Brazil and Argentines who play in Argentina, and 1 or 2 I think who played in Brazil. And he's a big centre forward, and he can run with the ball outside the box, which is one of the things that gave me hopes about him. But he came up with a dribble out wide, which he called the Lambretta, and it was absolutely magic. And he's running towards goal, wide, cutting in from the touchline towards goal, and then suddenly he kind of runs past the ball, so the ball's now behind him, flicks it up behind him with one foot, and with the other he then volleys it over the opponent and runs round the other side to pick it up. And I just thought this was from a big bustling centre forward, to see a little bit of skill like that, which was not only beautiful to watch, but also effective, that really knocked me out. It was one of the reasons that I got so big behind him. But there you go.
Did he flick it up?
A little bit.
Did he flick it up with the underside of his boot then from behind him?
Well, it was like watching like a cricket rub its legs together and make that noise.
Oh yeah,
It's like he used both his feet to kind of like work it up, and then kind of back heel it over.
Yeah.
And I suppose that's what I get for falling in love with a Lambretta, a player who never, and it looks like he's never really going to be a top grade. I should have listened to Mina.
Mina, what about the skill from your side? Can you think of anything? Magic.
I mean, I'm part of, or at least I'm supposed to comment on European football that basically is magic every single day, because we have the likes of Messi in it and so much more. But my one is actually a nostalgic one, only because it was firstly my favorite piece of commentary ever, and it's also because it's a defensive performance.
There you go.
But it was 2006.
Self-parody won't save you now.
Very good.
It was 2006. It's not really individual magic, I guess, but it was. Oh wow, it was something. It was 2006, Italy, Germany, and it was Fabio Cannavaro, and basically he was just this one man show at the back, and he was trying to stop Germany from getting into the box, and he comes out and uses like his physicality to header the ball out, and it finally falls nicely for another German player. And he comes in again. He had run all the way from deep to further upfield, to the base of the midfield, and again uses his physicality and his head to win the ball again, to then deliver it until he started and initiated the attacking game that led to Del Piero scoring the goal. But that moment was when the commentary started off with being like Cannavaro, because he had now won it with his head, and then he goes Cannavaro, because he'd now managed to do it again. You know, he'd again won another, and I think and then when he won the third aerial duel, he was like Cannavaro, and it was probably my favorite piece of commentary, because it was just like the guy was a one-man machine. He was defending all on his own. I mean, there was a reason why he won the Ballon d'Or that season, and just for those 6 games in the World Cup. But it was Cannavaro, and then it was Cannavaro, and then he initiated an entire game, and it was his magic that really solidified and secured the result and the win for Italy against Germany in that World Cup.
It helps to have
Can I ask you, Mina,
syllables.
if when you go to the cinema, do you cheer for the bad guy? Do you kind of stand up cheering when Bambi dies or something?
No, you can't do that. Not even Mina would do that.
Is that just because I like defensive players?
Yeah. I think it is, actually.
I mean, for somebody who just watched my team get thrashed 4-1, I mean...
It hurts sometimes, but sometimes you love it, don't you?
I need a bit of love. You can see why I've still lost my voice because of that game.
Kieran in Belfast is with us. Kieran, good morning.
Yeah.
Hey, good morning.
The question is about Sanchez from Arsenal.
Yeah.
Bayern Munich have offered 40 million. 300,000 a week.
Oh.
Yeah. Is he going to go?
Tim.
Oh.
I suspect he might, and Mina's closer to it than I am. The Arsene of old, the Arsene Wenger of old, would probably have sold him. And he's at the age when the Arsene Wenger in his prime would get rid of him. You think, late 20s, perhaps he's about to go down. And certainly something which I think will be concerning and should be concerning Mr. Wenger is that he's playing, or he's about to play, another summer tournament, the Confederations Cup. He played for Chile against Russia. He only came on for the last half hour and instantly was brilliant. He laid on the Chile goal in a 1-1 draw and was just instantly brilliant. But this is his fourth consecutive year with an international tournament. World Cup 2014, a Copa America 2015, a Copa America 2016, both times going all the way to the final, Confederations Cup this year, and all things being equal, a World Cup next year. Now, you pay a price for that. That will be 5 consecutive years without a full summer break for a player who really wants to cover every blade of grass. So, I wonder, I'll pass this one over to Mina for whether I know he's so important to the side, and it's hard to imagine an Arsenal side without him. But you wonder if Wenger might think this is the time to cash in.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Well, basically, he has been linked heavily to Bayern Munich. I think the amount stated for how much they are willing to pay him is exaggerated, but they are fans of him and they would like him to play for their team. I don't know how that's going to work out with Arturo Vidal as well in that side, but they are looking for the kind of talent and for what he can provide. Having said that, though, there's a Chilean journalist by the name of Sola Barrieta who's quite highly renowned. He works for Fox Sports, and he said that he's convinced he's going to Manchester City. So
really,
yeah. And his agent, Filicevic, would prefer a move to Manchester City as well. Now, this sounds bizarre to me because, firstly, he lives honestly, 3 roads down, yeah? which again, it's West London. And a lot of the times he apparently picked Arsenal over many other sides because he wanted to be in London and he wanted to be in, like the capital city. And I understand him wanting to go to Munich because he liked the idea of it as well. I don't understand why all of this. Then why did you reject Liverpool if you're just, if you're leaving London and you're happy to leave London to go to Manchester? Not that it's of course another big city, but he kept talking about being in the capital and not in another big city. So I don't know what. Sometimes that worries me.
He gave an interview, Mina, to the Chilean press saying that he found London tiring. So maybe
really?
the dream.
Maybe
from,
now that he found. Oh, that's a good one.
So maybe the dream.
He's had enough of it, basically.
Perhaps. And he likes his dogs. I think he wants more space to run with his dogs.
Yeah, and he lives in a block of flats. But I don't know. I mean, Bayern Munich is probably where he can go and guarantee himself at least one trophy. But of course, there is the chance of being reunited with Pep Guardiola at Manchester City. It's to stay within the same league that he really does enjoy. And it's like Tim said, why not cash in on the player and spend that elsewhere if you feel like he might be just a bit exhausted having to do everything at the moment. But it's very strange. In Italy, for example, they're convinced he's going to Bayern Munich. But Felicevich is notoriously hard to read as an agent. He speaks a lot, and you never know. And Juventus were interested in him too, but I think they dropped out. And if they are, and they're interested in Douglas Costa, which would mean that if Bayern are letting go of Douglas Costa, then they will take Sanchez.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Kieran. Appreciate
Thank
it. Do you ever bump into Sanchez, who lives just a few rows down from you there, Mina?
No, I live basically not that far from Craven Cottage, and he's just sort of like, not that far either.
So
I've never bumped
he's not
into...
out on the town like Andres Villas-Boas was. You were seeing him all the time, right into private eye with Andres Villas-Boas sightings, telling him what he was eating.
Oh my God, I did see Jose Mourinho today when I was having a coffee. When I went to get a morning coffee. Yes.
Go on.
And you know what was so funny is I actually turned my head and I was like, I look awful, as if the guy's going to recognize me and be like, how are you? But I all of a sudden got really concerned with the way that I looked. But yeah, he was just out in his tracksuit bottoms, just getting himself a coffee. And I was like, oh my God, that's Jose Mourinho.
This was in London, not in Manchester?
No, it was in London today.
Yeah.
4 p.m.
Okay. No. I don't doubt you at all. I'm just saying that he's supposed to be up in Manchester, isn't he?
Yeah, I know. I know.
Although he lives in a
say
hotel.
That he wants a holiday. His family are here as well. So
Yeah.
I've seen him in the same place. I've seen him in that particular coffee shop before. So clearly he lives around there.
Okay. And feel free to drop in any names that you bumped into recently along the way. Don't keep it to yourself there. Mark is with us in Holsworthy, and you're an Arsenal supporter, Mark. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi. Yeah, you've got a question about fullbacks, yeah?
Yeah, I would like to know who they would recommend if we stay to a three-back formation.
Yeah, because that's the winning formation for Arsene Wenger towards the end of the season, 3 at the back. Who would you recommend first, Mina, for Arsenal visitors from your region, from Europe?
Well, I can recommend a lot, but many of them won't be a realistic target. But you have gone in for Kolasinac, the Bosnian, who can add a little bit of strength and physicality. And he's quite versatile, so he can play in midfield as well as defense, out wide or further or in a more narrow position. And I think that's a great signing. He's perhaps not the most technically gifted player, but what he does offer is a little bit of strength and some physicality, and he actually prioritizes defense, which I think is important to know how to do. It's quite hard to play in a three-man defense when you've been used to playing with 4 at the back. So it's a very tough thing to do, and you have to be quite very organized as a side. I don't know whether Wenger should persist with this formation, because he really does need to buy a lot more centre backs. But you should be looking at ones like, let's see, youngsters that I would go for at the moment. I was going to suggest Rodriguez, but he went. Well, obviously, if you're going to go all out, then Bonucci is your best one. And right now at Juventus, you never know. He hasn't won anything, but would he really move to Arsenal is another question. But you're looking at guys who can lead a back line, who have physicality, and covered well by their wing backs. But I definitely think that Kolasinac at the moment is the best signing that you've got.
And Tim?
Was the question, Mark, about the centre backs or the wing backs for that formation?
Either, really. Whichever.
It is. It is a difficult. I think it's the easiest formation to play, because I think you must have, there are the really specific requirements that you need, and for the centre backs in that back three, and especially on the wide two, they got to be quick. No, because you're putting them out in wider space than if you're playing with an orthodox back four. You know, if you want to push up, you've got your wing backs high up the field, and the wing backs, if they can't reach the byline, there's just no point in playing the system in the first place. You know, because it means you're effectively playing a back five. So your wing backs are going to fly. That's what you want. You want people who that's difficult, because you want people who can defend and can attack like wingers. Sometimes in sides that play this one badly, in sides that play the back three badly, the wing backs become attackers when your team is defending and defenders when your team is attacking. So for those, you've got to have that capacity to bomb for, especially or maybe on one of the flanks. And Juventus, I think, do this really, really well in the way that they can switch from a back three to a back four. Because one side they've got in Alexandro, who can cover the entire left side, and the other side they've got in Barzagli, someone who can play as a centre back and then go out and play as a right back as well. So it's kind of tilted towards one side, but they managed to do that to work that quite well. So the wing back.
What do you
from Real Madrid?
Think of him? Yeah.
Well,
I mean, he's obviously, like, I think the pressure of. Yeah, but it's a huge club, and I think the pressure just got to him. And Carvajal is just so much better because of his, you know, he understands the game, or understands the environment at Madrid, and he is for me a child prodigy, was anyway. But I think that Danilo deserves another shot. He was better than Alexandro.
I agree. I like Alexandro.
Let's not beat around the bush, though, Mark. Are you looking for a replacement for Hector Bellerin?
No, more likely.
Because he might be going to Barcelona, from what I hear, Mina.
That would be a shocking loss if they let him go.
Yeah, but, well, you know...
I think Sligo Wanderers have someone, don't they?
They do indeed. That's very kind of you to mention that.
I thought that's where you were taking it, but if you're not, then let me.
No, not at all. He told me that Hector Bellerin had him in his pocket all match long when he played against him. But,
all right, so he's learned. Exactly, that's why I was thinking about it. He's learned from going in there against Bellerin.
But
let him do it.
But although it might be shocking to you, Mina, remember the way that the Arsenal fans treated him towards the end or halfway through this season. He might feel a little bit of a grudge, and he is a Barcelona boy, and they want him back.
Oh, I understand. I would understand him wanting to go back. But if you let that guy go, and you're also letting go
they said that about
Sanchez,
Cesc Fabregas, and he went.
But I'm really sorry. You cannot try to convince me that you are looking for sporting achievements when you're letting go of your best talent. If you're thinking, let me cash in on Alexis Sanchez, let me, Bellerin would like to go home, so here you are. This is ridiculous. How are you building a project by any stretch of the imagination?
Well, it's what you get when a football club is run as a business.
Yeah, well, then this is what it is. This is their summer to prove that they actually do care about it. They're trying to convince us that they care about sporting achievements. If so, then they need to put a project in place where it looks like they're going to try to hold on to the talent that they have and not cash in. And if that means losing money, then so be it. Obviously, I think that they're going to prefer to make money, but it means holding on to the likes of Bellerin, who's a great talent. I understand him leaving. I understand Ozil wanting to leave or Sanchez wanting to leave, but you still don't let them go. You try to convince them to stay and build towards something and offer them the right players to play alongside to guarantee yourself wins and consecutive ones and a little bit more stability to do more than just fight for a top 4 position. So I got very heated there.
No, it's fair enough. Mark, what do you reckon? What do you reckon, Mark?
Well, obviously, I would like our side to play a little bit better than we did last season. But I think that I disagree that I think we will find the passion somewhere, because I think that now Wenger obviously has signed, I think, a 2-year deal. I think that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he needs to prove himself more. I know that the owners like to run it as a business, but I think his passion for the game, that he's proven that he really does believe in the football he plays. I think he really believes he can win the league again.
How if he doesn't have his best players?
Well,
And when we're talking about, he's now up against Pep Guardiola in his second season, Jose Mourinho in his second season at United, Conte, who has won it with such relative ease it was almost ridiculous. How is he going to do this if he's going to sell Alexis Sanchez and let go of Hector Bellerin and look to make free transfers for, like, so, I told you just, the Schalke defender is a great one, or at least offers a level of physicality. But again, he is not going to be, he's not a star name. He's not a guy who's going to change the back line. Not even Mustafi managed that despite the money spent on him. So how are you going to, I understand him being passionate, but he's an old school manager where he's trying to run the club in every position. Basically, he's their sporting director, he's their tactician, he's their man manager, he's basically everything. How can you devote time to the tactical development of the game and to your players when you have so many other tasks to deal with as well?
Ah, Mark, you allowed the Colonel to out-talk you this time. Never mind, call me next week and maybe you can get your own back. We've got this email for you guys. It's a good one, all the way from down under. In fact, let's take Ben in Farnham first of all before we get to the email. Ben, good morning.
Good morning, Dalton. How you doing?
I'm doing fine, thank you. I'm glad you called.
I get that a lot.
Well, me too. Me too. The most embarrassing moments. But anyway, yeah, I'm doing fine. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Fantastic. Before I ask my question, I'm with my friend. We've been listening for about 6 years or more. The show you guys put on is incredible. Easily our favourite football podcast. So thank you very much.
Oh, wow.
Thank you. Thank you. Well done. Well done. Yeah, keep it up as well. As it, I really appreciate that.
Awesome. Just a quick one. Been listening a long time, as I say, a little bit nervous, as I think is obvious. But we have a question for Mina. We support Chelsea, myself, and United. Is my friend. It's his birthday today, and he's demanded I call in, respectively. But we also have a soft spot for Napoli. We've been to see them play. We've been very lucky. We saw Cavani's last game when he scored a hat-trick against Inter, and we just wondered, Napoli have a great record recently of signing players from lower league, with respect, Serie A teams, Diawara, Zielinski, and so forth. Who does Mina think Napoli should bring in to really push for the title?
Hey,
are there any gems?
Don't ask me. Ask her directly.
Hi, Mina. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. Who should they bring in to push for the title?
Who should they bring in?
You know what? I have honestly, there are a few sides in the world, and I'm going to say this, and I know that that's probably like I'm being too complimentary to some, but they really, you're right, they have had a terrific record when it comes to scouting talent that not many people have necessarily believed in or offered the opportunities to them, or players that weren't big names, and they have turned them into stars. And they're really lucky now because they have a coach in Maurizio Sarri, who is so organized in his attacking game and has introduced so much fluidity and a great passing scheme that facilitates their style of play and makes them the best team to watch in Italy by far. And Zielinski has had a terrific season. Nobody at the time thought of anything of him really, or that he can turn into that. Dries Mertens, a lot of the times he was heavily criticized. He's not from the lower leagues, but obviously when they lost Milik to injury, Sarri managed to convert this guy into the world's greatest striker, and his stats are pretty much almost better than what Higuain managed at Napoli. So who can they bring in? Honestly speaking, I don't think anyone can do the job that they do. They have been so good at what they've been doing that it's impossible for me to offer them any recommendations or any players that they can go and look into. But I would love them to go into Atalanta and take in some of those youngsters that Gasparini's helped nurture and create. That's another great project. When it comes to picking out talent and scouting, the stars of the future. Atalanta is perhaps the best club by far. But they invest in Italian talent more than Napoli does. So, looking at like the likes of Conti, the fullback who, may be going to Milan, but he's a terrific talent. Or they've obviously lost Caldera to Juventus, Atalanta. But if the likes of Napoli can push forward and bring in the sort of defenders who have the stamina, because their game is so attacking that when they lose possession, often it's very hard for them to get back into position straight away. And you saw that a lot when it comes against the big teams like Real Madrid and so on and so forth. It's easier to do in Serie A, but to go for that attacking game because they'll always outscore the opponent. But defensively, that's where they're the weakest. And the kind of game they play means that they need to mimic a little bit of what Real Madrid do, is buy players that are very good in one-on-one situations. Koulibaly has been terrific for them, but they need to look at the defensive side of things and buy players who have the stamina and the pace that can get back into position quickly and win the duel when it comes to them, when it comes to losing possession. So at the moment, Atalanta is where to go when it comes to picking young talent. I'd like to see them invest more in Italian talent. So that's probably where I would tell them. But you know what? They always know what to do far better than I can.
Ben?
That was awesome. I'd have been more than happy if Mina had just said Balotelli, to be completely honest. But such an answer.
Imagine they got Balotelli.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I know it's so cheeky because it's only for Brazilian shirt name holders, but it is my friend's birthday. He has a question for Mina about who United should sign. Do you mind if I put him on the phone?
No, go on this one cheeky occasion. All right. Is that okay with you,
Good
Tim?
evening.
Tim, is that okay with you?
Thank you very much for taking
special
the question.
dispensation.
Yeah. Sorry.
I was just
Emma,
curious.
Happy birthday.
yeah, happy birthday,
Thank you
by the
very
way.
much.
How old are you?
That's the big 29.
29?
29. Yeah,
29? Is that big?
Oh, yes, I remember it well.
Yeah,
Gosh, man.
it's yeah.
Okay,
it
so
feels quite long.
Yeah, fair enough.
I'll be quick. As a Man U fan, there's a lot of links with Morata, and obviously Marie, she's seen them play at Juventus, Morata, and I was very curious to see what she thought, how he would do in the Prem.
Ask her yourself. Don't ask me. Ask her yourself.
Well, actually, Mourinho was the guy who gave him his debut. So it would, if I'm Manchester United, in fact, if I'm most teams at the moment, I would definitely be going in for Morata. I know that it's very expensive. He's 70 million, and that's perhaps the reason that a lot of teams are a little bit scared. But I'll tell you something. I don't think there's a better coach out there who spots talent than Pochettino. And he desperately wanted Morata to come to him. But Alvaro wanted to give it another shot at Real Madrid. It is his home. It's his city. It's his club. He's been their fan for so long. And when he had the chance of going back there and proving himself after Juventus, he wanted to stay. And if he was going to move, then it was probably going to be for Antonio Conte, because he was a coach who really believed in Morata and really wanted to do something special with him. So if Morata, now he's been heavily linked to Manchester United, and losing Zlatan Ibrahimovic will be tough. And Morata is not necessarily the kind of guy who will bring others into play or help sacrifice himself for the side, but he will score goals. And he offers a counter-attacking threat. He's got pace, he's got talent, he's so technical, and he's driven. When he's happy and not emotionally stunted or broken in any way, shape or form, which he was at Juventus. At the time, he had broken up with his girlfriend, and it just seemed to be the end of him. He was crying all the time. Any injury would set him off. And Gianluigi Buffon, and he said this, he admitted it in an interview, that Buffon actually took him aside and said, listen, you got to man up here, in the nicest way possible, but you've got to not let anyone see you cry, because you're better than this, you're stronger than this, and you need to prove to everyone around you who wants to see you fail that you won't. And to those who want to see you succeed, prove them right, make them happy. And that helped him on an emotional level. And every time he's been given the opportunity by Zinedine Zidane, he has repaid him. Now, a lot of people in Spain think that he hasn't been offered as many opportunities as he should have been, because Ronaldo doesn't like to play for him. Unlike Karim Benzema, Asensio, Lucas Vazquez, those other guys, he is not necessarily willing to sacrifice himself or the opportunity for goal to just deliver for Ronaldo. He wants to take those shots. He believes in himself, and he should as well. He's very good. But he doesn't do that. So it seems a little bit like it's a power struggle at the top. I don't know. Although the two get along very well, it's not about that. It's just about on the pitch. Ronaldo doesn't necessarily want to play for him according to what they say in Spain. But if I was Manchester United and Morata wants to come to me, believe me, I wouldn't hesitate. He is a magnificent player. And all you need to see is how often he scores goals in the big matches to tell you that when he wants to, he will make a difference, whether it be against Bayern Munich, whether it be at the semi-final, anywhere, he will make the difference.
That's fantastic.
Well, happy birthday, man. It was worth it, yeah?
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
As we say in Sweden, ja må han leva, ja må han leva, ja må han leva ut i 100 år. Ja visst ska han leva, ja visst ska han leva ut i 100 år. That's happy birthday to you, mate.
I'm half Swiss, so it's bon anniversaire for me.
Bon anniversaire, bon anniversaire, bon anniversaire. What's the next line?
Bon anniversaire à vous.
And that's it?
Oh no, it keeps going.
Okay.
I don't know if it was...
Go on, sing it then.
Bon
Talk about putting him on the spot.
Bon anniversaire à vous. To be honest, I've not been back to Switzerland for quite a while, so my French is quite rusty.
Okay, no, you did okay. Well, you convinced us that you're fully Swiss in any case. Hey, mate, great to speak to you. Have a great time, yeah?
You too. You guys have a good night. Thank you again.
Yeah, thanks a lot. No, pleasure. Okay, this one for you, Tim, from Kieran in Melbourne, Australia. Good day, he says.
Good day.
First-time emailer, long-time listener. So what does that mean, Tim?
It means I can't wait for the question. I wonder if it's got anything to do with the game that happened earlier this morning at the MCG.
Yeah, it does, actually. And it also means it's going to be a great question. I attended the Brazil versus Argentina game last night where there was a reported 95,000 fans inside the MCG. The highlight for most of them was cheering on fans who were throwing paper planes onto the pitch to see who could land theirs the closest to the players. I wanted to know Tim's thoughts about the game. I also heard this from a friend, but is it true that both teams are contractually obliged to play a friendly against each other at a venue somewhere around the world once a year? And also how the players feel about this type of commitment at the end of a long season. Neymar's decision to pull out at the last minute annoyed many of the fans and the match promoters. Thanks and keep up the great work, all of you.
It wasn't Neymar's decision to pull out. It was the coach's decision to rest him and most of Brazil's first teamers, which had commercial repercussions because Neymar was used to sell the game. You know, even the match tickets had his face on. And the fact that Brazil didn't take Neymar, I think that meant that there had to be some kind of renegotiation. And Brazil's coach, I don't think he really wanted to go. You know, it's a long, long way to go at the end of the season. All right. So what's he done? He's used it, and his watchword here is opportunity. He's taken fringe players, and what he did in the Argentina game is he used the kind of direct reserves. There were 4 first choice players there. All the rest were the direct reserves. So let's see what you can do. They've got another game coming up also at the MCG on Tuesday against Australia, and there I think he'll be a little bit more adventurous. He'll have a look at people he's brought in from the cold, like for example our old friend David Luiz or Alexandro. So he'll widen out the opportunity. What he's desperate to do here is to avoid what happened to Brazil in the run-up to the last World Cup, where they solidified their team with a year to go. And that's the team, that's our team, we've done the hard part, and it all went horribly wrong. So, you know, for Brazil, even though they've lost their 100% record with this coach, anything that happens is a bonus because they're looking at new players. If anyone performs well, that puts pressure on the first choice player. I don't think too many of them covered themselves in glory. For Argentina, an important match because first match under the new coach Jorge Sampaoli. They've got a match on Tuesday against Singapore, so they're not going to learn too much from that one. So it was important for Argentina to test themselves against good opposition. And the impressive thing, I think, from the Argentina point of view is that, Sampaoli has only been training with the team for, just a few days. But he's already clearly got some concepts in there. He's changed the lineup, changed the shape of the team. He went with his back three and he looked to really press Brazil, as Brazil looked to press Argentina as well. So it was a kind of fiery encounter without a lot of space on the field. Argentina did very well in blocking Brazil down the middle of the field. Brazil could never get going down the middle of the field. Brazil had a couple of opportunities first half when they put lovely combinations together and slipped a player wide behind the Argentine defensive line wide, and they could have scored a couple of goals first half, but the fellow who kind of set the rhythm for the first half was really, I think, Banega in the midfield for Argentina, and he was a supply line for the one player who really found space, who was Di Maria, as a kind of left wing back. And Di Maria kept running at Brazil, kept finding space and running, and I think he just kind of tipped the balance in the first half, and the goal came from his cross. It was a corner from Argentina, played back to him, he crossed to the far post. Brazil's defence had come too close to the near post. There was space there at the far post, and that's where they scored a goal. Second half, Sampaoli changed after a few minutes. Sampaoli changed the shape of his side from a back three. He went round to an orthodox back four. Now you might think that would leave his defence better because he's got an extra defender there, but he'd lost some of his power there with the midfield block. And if you don't stop the move at the point of origin, doesn't matter how many defenders you've got there, if they're not quick enough, they can all be played out with one pass. And that's what was happening. And Brazil missed a golden chance to equalise when it was a Man City thing. Fernandinho slipped Gabriel Jesus behind the defensive line, rounded the keeper. All he's got to do is roll it into an open net and he hit the post. And it comes out for William of Chelsea, who arrives and then blasts it against the other post. And you kind of knew then that Brazil weren't going to score that day. And Sampaoli then corrected the mistake that he'd made, I think, changing to a back four when he sent on a defensive midfielder who kind of plugged the gap a little bit. So it was a fiery game, and it kind of petered out in the end, as international friendlies often do, with kind of substitutions and injury stoppages. But I think at the end, Argentina come out of it with a really good morale boost. In just a few days, new coach has come in. He's implanted a completely different system, shown a variation on that system as well. So they're looking better towards the crunch game, which is World Cup qualification away to Uruguay at the end of August. Especially as Uruguay are looking really, really bad. From Brazil's point of view, well, you've got to lose that 100% record sometime. Far better do it in a friendly against Argentina than in the World Cup. The contractual thing that you mentioned, no, there's no contractual obligation to play Argentina once a year. There was an idea to play twice a year, home and away, only using domestically based players. But there's no real space in the calendar to do that. So that's fallen by the wayside for a while. It did cause, I think, problems in terms of man management. The end of a tiring European season, you've got to get the players all the way over to Australia. It's not ideal, but I don't think the crowd got shortchanged in the end. I think it was 90 quite intense minutes with plenty of interesting things there and plenty of lessons to be learned.
And in New Delhi's with us. Sorry, were you about to say something there, Mina?
No. Go for it, please.
Anand, good morning.
Good morning, Dutton. How are you, Mike?
I'm all right, thanks. You good?
Buenas, Tim. Hi, Mina.
Hello.
So, Tim, how did you find watching a game in MCG?
Through blurry eyes, and it was 7 o'clock in the morning our time. Although it kicked off just a few minutes late because Argentina got stuck in traffic on the way to the MCG. So and Brazil wouldn't let them kick off later. Brazil said no, it's that time. So it's going to be that time. I've had a hard couple of days because I had to get up at 7 to watch Argentina Brazil. The day before I got up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I've never got up at 5 o'clock in the morning. Usually you see 5 o'clock in the morning from the other side, the other way around. But 5 to watch the Venezuela-Uruguay semi-final in the World Under-20s. So my eyes have been kind of kept open with matchsticks at the moment.
Tim, do you know what time it is in London?
Yeah, thank you, Mina.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, it's 3:23. Not a problem. Not a problem for me.
What time is it for you?
4 hours difference, but during your winter, it's only 2 hours difference.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, one of us is up until 5 o'clock in the morning. Well, not just one of us, many of our listeners indeed. Stay with me. But anyway, yeah, you made your point, Tim. Anna, you haven't made your point yet. Go ahead.
Yeah, my sincere commiserations to Mina for losing another final.
Yeah, that was just what she needed to hear. Well done.
You know, I've actually never watched them win. Like, I've started to think that it's me.
Probably is.
My theory on Juventus is that they had their Babe Ruth moment in '97, I guess, when they sold Vialli and Vanelli after winning a season. Right.
Yeah, and well, that was a great chance for them to win something. And also, to be honest, they that time against Real Madrid in '98, they were the favourites. They were the better side. They came in that with all the experience in the world, and Madrid was scared, and they ruined it. Again, they were arrogant. They wrote 1-0 on the back of their hands, and they threw that away and handed Madrid the Septima and opened an era of dominance for the Spanish Giants, while they have yet to find another trophy.
I mean, sincerely, I could able to understand what the team did between 45 to 60 when they
the second half.
Sleep. Yeah.
Look, I think it's a very difficult one. I had my eyes closed for most of that because it was just so painful to watch.
Did it help?
I cannot explain to you. I was in it, the whole Juventus get-up, okay, like a moron fan, okay? I had gone there just wanting to be a fan. I refused to do anything but, just really support my team. And lo and behold, my ticket was bam smack in the middle of every single Real Madrid fan that ever graced Cardiff, okay? So firstly, I was terrified, that I was going to get killed. Half of them were trying to explain to me why Madrid was the better choice to support and that I should switch allegiances, okay? And then I watched Juventus play a terrific first half, and I was like, I'm sorry, excuse me. I'm starting to choke now. Anyway, a terrific first half. And then something happened. I was a little bit worried. I'll tell you,
I've seen my team lose a number of finals, so it will be all right. But I think '97 was a worse one when you lose.
Hang on,
Dortmund.
Anand, you've got to be a gentleman. Mina was in the middle of trying to tell us what her experiences was. Bear with her. Finish your point, Mina.
No, she was about to choke, so I have to intervene.
I know. I get that. You are a gentleman sometimes. But we want to hear the end of that story. Go on, Mina.
Okay, I was just, now I feel like it's not that interesting anymore. Basically, I remember just sitting there waiting because and noticing that Juventus came out first from the break.
Better be a good punchline.
There is no punchline. I honestly, I think that if you call a team serial chokers every single time they're asked about the final, they're going to choke. And a part of it, all my friends turned around to me and said to me, you know what Juventus is missing? It's missing the arrogant guys that made you so famous in the 90s. It's missing your Paolo Monteros, your Angelo Di Livios, your guys who went out there and thought, you know what, we're going to win this. And I said, actually, I don't think that's what they're missing. I think what they missed is they went into that final thinking they'd won it because they were the most consistent and really fascinating side to watch in Europe and domestically this season. Just watching them, they looked in control in every match, and they thought this was it. This is our time. We're going to do this. Their motto, their hashtag was, it's time. And I felt like they'd gone there thinking, we've got this. Don't worry, we're going to win this. And what Juventus don't have experience at this season is that they've never really had to fight back. They haven't really been in a match where they watched their chances go away and really worried about the result and produced the performance that, of champions. They've just basically gone in and dominated their games. They dominated against Monaco. They dominated against Barcelona. They dominated against Porto. They've never really been shaken. And playing Real Madrid, who are the comeback kings, who are constantly scoring last-minute goals in the 93rd minute through Sergio Ramos to try to get those 3 points to overcome and overtake Barcelona and make sure they keep their place at the top of the league, gave them that ability to deal with every situation, which Juventus didn't have. So when they went a goal down, it was good that they managed to get the equalizer, but in the second half, that was it. I mean, they were already tactically outdone by Zidane, who so effectively, by the way, neutralized every Juventus strength and really brought to light his own players' abilities. You know, just changing tactical, and it took a while for Allegri to adjust, and it took a while for the team to realize what was going on. Adjustments needed to be made quickly, but it was a collapse, because as soon as they went a goal down, and then the one straight away after that, it was it. There was no fight. They had no idea what to do, and I just started crying.
You see, you touch an emotional chord there, Anand, which is a shame, because once you touched Mina's emotional chord and she rambled and rambled and rambled and rambled and rambled and rambled on, we ran out of time. And you didn't get to ask your question. You see, you shouldn't have gone down that route. Yeah. You should have just stuck to your question.
No, don't worry. Dortmund. No. He made his point about Dortmund.
Yeah, I know, but you had another point to make, didn't you, Anna?
Yeah. So this question came to my mind after the finals. So right now there are two systems going in European management broadly. One is the English system, where you have a manager like Arsene Wenger doing everything, and on the other, buying players, managing and everything. And on the other side, there is this model by Real Madrid, Bayern Munich and Juventus, where the club buy the players, the head coach comes and coaches the player who are in the club, and they are not bothered about the rest of the other thing as intensely as the English system does. So which one, Tim and Mina, you both think is a much more pertinent system given the current demands of the game?
Well, you might get an answer after the news and sport, and thanks a lot for the call, Anand. It's a good question, is it?
It's a good question.
Yeah, but it wasn't you that got bitten just now, was it, Mina?
No, that wasn't me.
It wasn't you. So it's obviously Tim. I think Tim's had a good bite, as it were. Do you know, I was always told as a journalist that dog bites man, no story. But man bites dog. Front page news.
Don't worry.
Front page.
I've just gone and dealt with him.
Yeah, that's Didier Drogba in the background there. Yeah, sorry. No, he's not Ross Barkley. There's only one dog that has a Brazilian. No, somebody sent me in my ear Ross Barkley. No. There's only one dog that has a Brazilian shirt name. That's Didier Drogba. So talking of Didier Drogba, the only canine with a Brazilian shirt name, he's the descendant of Spaniel Alves, and
Spaniel Alves.
Yeah, and R.I.P. Spaniel Alves, and there is no. I'm stating this again. There is no Ross Barkley with a Brazilian shirt name. And there is no Harry Canine either, please.
Question time.
Ross Barkey. Yeah, but what did I say? I never said Ross Barkley. I know his actual name. So I'm having a conversation here with our studio director.
You did say Ross Barkley. He's right.
Did I? Yeah. Oh, well, I meant to say Ross Barkey then. Apologies, yeah. Our studio director that knows nothing about football, the only footballer's name he knows is Ross Barkley. So he got his pun in nice and early. Anyway, let's get back to the questions. 0808 5909 693. Again, this one for you, Tim, from Martin. He was. Do both of you want to answer Anand's question very quickly, though, if you thought about that? The question that Anand threw us before the news.
The different types of management.
Yeah. Any thoughts on that, either of you?
I didn't actually hear it. I was too busy trying to deal with a dog.
Okay. So basically, it was there are two types of sort of ways to go now in football. You either have the Arsene Wenger English manager kind of style, or the other one, which is been described as the continental way, which is having a sporting director and who buys the basic team, and then the coach just coaches them and relies on the tactics and sort of, I guess, what's better, right?
It's coaches versus managers, I suppose.
Yeah, coaches versus managers. I'm always going to be, personally, I think that nowadays football is so difficult and there's so much expected and there's so much to look at, from statistics to how the player is moving, to his posture. I mean, we have a football coach in Italy who just looks at the posture the whole time and who has so much video evidence that he goes through that I wouldn't even understand why he would have the time to do anything but just train the team. I'm always amazed that Wenger can do all of the things that he does and really still manage to get top four, because it must be difficult to coach a side, to develop youth, to talk to them, to be their father, to be their tactician, to be their, you know, the man in authority, and at the same time, like, run a club. And I just think nowadays there's so much to do that it's impossible. And a lot of the times there's these guys, some really good coaches out there, but they're not necessarily the best at picking talent, and they make mistakes. Jose Mourinho has made mistakes. Pep Guardiola has made mistakes, least of all Claudio Bravo. But, you know, ones that perhaps they're not the best pick at the time. I know Antonio Conte would sometimes come to Juventus with his suggestions of players that he wanted, and they would just stare at him being like, no, like, we're not going to get you. Like, for example, Walcott. He's just not right for Juventus. And sometimes you do need the likes of, you know, Sevilla's Monchi and Juventus's Paratici, these great sporting directors that know how to balance the side, because they actually take the time to do more than just scout the players. They talk to the man, they talk to the individual, they test him out in difficult situations to know how he will react on the pitch. You know, is he an emotional player? Is he going to be a guy who's going to get upset if this happens to him? Is he going to be a guy who handles the pressure? Does he have the experience for big matches? To do all of that and then transfer and interpret your tactical ideas and you know, give that to the players as well as deal with contracts, it's too much. So for me, I think that division of tasks is the best way to go.
Tim, how about for you?
Yeah, the only problem is if the manager is working out that hierarchy of, because the club should have a long-term project. You know, the club should have some idea of where it's going. And one of the great inefficiencies in the transfer market, and perhaps especially in England, where we do have that kind of cult of the manager, is you bring in a manager, you give him lots of money to spend on the idea that he's going to be around for a few years. So he spends lots of money, and then he gets sacked after 18 months. You bring a new manager in who doesn't want the players that the last fella has brought in. So that's an inefficiency that it's just pouring money down a rat hole. So it is good to have the kind of stability that you have someone who's there to take care of the signings. And also, especially to take care of the contracts. You know, the old English managers, they used to train the team and deal with contracts. I was thinking about this recently. You know, when you know, with the Ranieri thing of Leicester, because my kind of knee-jerk reaction is managers get sacked too quickly and so on. But then I was thinking, hang on a minute. You know, when I was a kid and they never got sacked, they stayed for years and years and years. If you think about West Ham, what West Ham could have been, what they threatened to be, you know, when they won the Cup Winners' Cup in '65 and playing absolutely sensational football, really sensational football. And they had there, you know, Moore was already established and Hurst and Peters are coming through. You know, you've got great raw material there, but it never happened. And why didn't it happen? And it's clear that one reason it didn't happen is that from around that time, from quite soon afterwards, the relationship between the manager, Ron Greenwood, and the captain, Bobby Moore, just completely broke down. And it was allowed to go on for years and years and years and years. And part of that is about contracts, you know. So the idea that the fellow who trains you and coaches you and is the strategist should also be the fellow who's negotiating with you, I think that's frankly absurd, and that there should be a split there. But there's obviously room for problems with that hierarchy of the sporting director and the coach. If they're not speaking the same language, then it's absolutely stupid, you know. But you're just having a fruit salad that complicates the whole thing. But if you can get those two working together, which means getting the hierarchy between the two sorted out, then I think you've got a good recipe. Because you know, the old style manager, the job has just grown so much. But you just can't do it anymore. You couldn't really do it back then. You know, and the generation who did it, the Bill Shankleys and the Bill Nicholsons and so on, they absolutely sacrificed their life, you know, to take care of all of the business of the club. And I think it's just grown that you can't do that anymore. So there has to be some division, but that division has to be clearly established, and the ships have to sail in the same direction.
This is from Paul.
Yeah.
Who's the best young goalkeeper in either of your regions? As a
It's an easy one.
As a Sunderland fan. As a Sunderland fan, Pickford has been outstanding, but will he be at Sunderland next season is a question. If not, where do you see him going? Well, I don't know if you can answer that one, either of you. But Mina, do you want to go first? Best young goalkeeper in Europe?
Yeah, Pickford really has been something truly special, especially at a team that you really that disappoint on so many occasions. He's been the guy to look at the whole time. I mean, he's apparently going to move to Everton. That's the team that's been linked to him, but he doesn't want to answer those questions yet. He just wants to concentrate at the moment, and then he'll deal with that later. But otherwise, I think the star that everyone talks about is obviously Gianluigi Donnarumma. He's supposed to be the heir to Buffon. He's 18, 19 years old. He's huge. He's absolutely huge. I remember there was one guy on Italian TV who just wondered what on earth they're feeding the kids these days, because he is such a physical specimen. He's just so big. But at the same time, he's very quick, reflexes good, authoritarian at the back, really passionate. Really, I mean, he's a guy who got given his debut at Milan by Mihajlovic, and he just stunned. Everyone said when he was playing as a youngster that this was going to be the next guy. And at the moment, he's being linked to Real Madrid and to everyone. But Zidane wants to keep hold of Navas because of various different reasons, more than anything in the dressing room environment. So that's probably the guy to look at because he's so young. Other ones and notable ones are the ones of Benfica's one, who's now Ederson, who has perhaps or not yet, depending on your view of the exchange rate, moved to Manchester City for a record fee. I don't know whether it's still more than Gianluigi Buffon or not, but he's very good, and he was actually pointed out by a sporting director recently. Otherwise, I don't necessarily. I mean, he is so good with his feet, and I'm not. This is what I mean. I'm not huge into guys who know how to use their feet. I'm not a fan of the Neuer style of goalkeeping. I like my goalkeepers to be traditional goalkeepers, Don't do anything fancy, just rescue us, on every occasion. But he is very clever. And he's the goalkeeper who actually gets an assist. So if he managed that at Benfica, and he knows how to initiate attacks. He's got really strong wrists. So that's something that, he'll, on a wide stretch, really, he's somebody to look at. He's only 23, has much more time to develop into something even better, and he's coming to Manchester City. And the last one I would say is Juventus' Emile Odero, who was given his starting debut in the final game of the season. He's half Indonesian, half Italian. Again, another one who uses his feet, but perhaps not to the ability that Ederson can. But those are the ones that, alongside Pickford, are the ones to look at for the future.
Yeah, and in South America?
Well, just quickly on Donnarumma, the Italian goalkeeper. I wonder, looking at him, do you think as he grows up, I wonder if he'll lose some of that flexibility? Because he is huge. He looks like Primo Carnero, the ambling amp. The ambling Alp. I'd be a little bit worried about. He's so big. I'll be a bit worried about him growing into a lummox. So he does look very promising. Best one from my region. You can watch him on Sunday trying to stop England in the Under-20 World Cup final. Wilker Fariñas of Venezuela. Very different kind of keeper from Donnarumma. He's on the small side for a keeper. He's less than 6 foot, Fariñas, but he is just so athletic. Really live. I think he's better. I think that honestly, and Venezuela have known for a while that they have a phenomenon on their hands. They took him to the Copa America in 2015 when he was 17, and he's already, he's first choice goalkeeper now for Venezuela at senior level. He's just so lithe, and so although he's not particularly big, he's just wonderfully agile. The one place I think you can do him is up top. I think you can put him out. You can put it over him. It'll be interesting to see if England work on that, if they get the opportunities on Sunday. But he's very, very confident, very, very live, and he's already got considerable experience. And I think he'll be filling a lot of scouts' notebooks. So there are a few on this Venezuela side. I've been bigging them up for a while. They haven't reached the final through coincidence. They've only conceded 2 goals, 6 games. And one of them came in the quarter-final against the States. In the last, I knew you'd enjoy that. In the last minute when they were already 2-0 up. And the other one was a dodgy penalty, one of those things when the video ref just makes an idiot of himself and gives a penalty that wasn't, and the referee hadn't given. They've only conceded 2 goals in 6 games. My worry about them, just, 'cause we haven't got long left, but projecting the game against England on Sunday morning, my worry about them is that in all the 3 knockout rounds, they've gone 120 minutes, and England haven't. England have only played 90. But beating Japan, beating the States, and beating Uruguay, Venezuela have had to do the complete 120 minutes, and there's just so little gap between the semi and the final. You get a semi which is on Thursday and the final which is on Sunday, so there's not a lot of recovery time then. So it'd be interesting to see if England can take advantage of that on Sunday.
Says Andrew in Blackheath. Is that the gent?
Morning.
Good morning, Mr. Gent.
Morning. Nice to be back.
Yeah, well,
Morning.
You have been through the wars, I know, and
Yes,
I welcome you back. I mean,
recovering back from my period of terrible grief, but never mind.
I know.
Nice to be back with the land of my friends of World Football Phone-In.
Many people have asked for you, I must say. Many people have asked for you. I've spent a lot of time emailing people and trying to explain that you're taking a sojourn at the moment. And beyond that, I really feel for you, and I know what you're going through. Really, really, we're a big family.
I do appreciate your kindness and all the other people who've sent me messages as well. It makes me feel better.
we're a big family, Jen.
Yeah.
We're a big family, so, just lean on us if ever you need to, okay?
Thanks a lot. Well, I thought I would ring up with some interesting news. A snippet I saw that Bayern Munich are trying to buy Sanchez from Arsenal. Now, Bayern have got this brilliant centre-forward by the name of Robert Lewandowski.
I knew you'd bring that up. I knew you'd bring that up.
He always brings it up.
Declaring interest. Declaring interest.
He scored his 30 goals a season. His partner, Muller, for the last 2 years, just has lost it. They need another world-class striker. Just think, by the way, I think Bayern are one of the 3 best teams in Europe. Real Madrid, Barcelona, Bayern Munich. Now, if they had Sanchez and Lewandowski, how many goals would they score between them? There'd be terrifying defences in Germany and all over England. What do the panel think?
The most important thing is that Lewandowski is Polish.
Yeah, of course.
That's the most important thing. Let's get that straight. So we were talking about it earlier, Mina. Lewandowski and Sanchez together, how many goals a season do you reckon?
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure that I don't know. I know that obviously you're a huge fan of Lewandowski, but did you see what he said about the fact that he blamed his teammates for not winning a top goal scorer in the Bundesliga?
So he really, as you note, Muller has lost his touch.
He has, and he's difficult for Ancelotti to place in the right position to get the best out of him. He doesn't seem to know what to do with him.
Yeah.
But listen, I mean, Lewandowski came out and complained about the fact that he felt like his teammates didn't, help him out, especially in the last match, to really get the goals that he needed to secure that. And he did win Bundesliga Player of the Year, and he is probably, honestly, like one of the top 3 number 9s out there. A phenomenal talent, and he needs help at the moment going forward. Sure. I don't understand why Douglas Costa is not being looked upon as a little bit more.
Same here. About a year ago, I thought he was absolutely an outstanding prospect. But he seems to have not developed much more.
Yeah, very strange. Yeah. Ancelotti doesn't seem to be relying on him. I know Ancelotti's a big fan of the old guard and the veterans when it comes to play, and he hasn't really given the likes of Koeman and Douglas Costa much of a look in, but really more than anything, he's such a professional. That man trains. He's the first to training, last to leave, and he is constantly in a battle with himself to improve. So I was quite shocked about that, because really he's the kind of guy that I think that would make Lewandowski even better. Of course, if you put in Sanchez, that's another one. But then there's also the risk that Sanchez is so good, he might eat up all the opportunities that are otherwise offered to Lewandowski.
What I noticed in Bayern Munich, by the way, I wonder if you agree with me, Lewandowski is excellent in the air. Now, they will mess around passing it on the floor too much. Sometimes stick a good high ball into the middle and he'll get a go with his head. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I see what you mean. I guess it depends on with the style of players that they have. Yeah, you're right. No, you're right. It is about like giving it, sometimes allowing him to use his full scope and his full range of skills, his ability to win the duels. He is also a physical specimen, so why not exploit that? But I think Ancelotti was trying to carry on, not change too much from what happened under Pep Guardiola, sort of maintain a style of football, but take off the pressure that Guardiola had them under. It was so much, emphasis on playing with such a strict regimen, with so much discipline, and he's allowed them to sort of relax a little bit.
Well, Guardiola apparently was telling Lewandowski, and I read this in a Polish newspaper, you don't defend enough. He's an out-and-out goal scorer. He doesn't want him playing centre-half, thank you very much.
You've all got to be a midfielder if you want to play for Guardiola, haven't you?
Yeah, you really do.
Even the goalkeeper has to be a midfielder.
Oh, dear.
But I'm sure Sanchez would be a great signing for them.
And, listen, it's been a pleasure coming back to reality after my five months of being a zombie. And I'll try and ring in reasonably often from now on.
As Mercutio said to Romeo, gent.
Yeah.
Why is this not better now than groaning for love? Now art thou sociable. Now art thou Romeo. Now art thou what thou art, by art as well as by nature.
Let me give you one short quote somebody quote to me. Deep grief is the result of great love.
Yep, that's a good one. That's a good one. That's a good one. I usually think Shakespeare tops all other quotes. Do you not, Andrew?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
This one, I don't know where this little one came from. My little granddaughter sent it to me yesterday.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So, with that quote from Mercutio, can we tempt you back on to be a regular on the World Football Phoning? It's not the same without you.
Yes, please, if you'll have me. I know I used to be on too much, people complain. I'll try and ring in about every month or something like that.
Yeah, ring as much as you want, yeah?
Thank you, Doctor. And I do appreciate your kindness. Thanks a lot. It does mean a lot to me.
Stay strong, man.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
good
you.
to hear
Bye-bye.
from you. All the best.
Bye-bye.
All the best. One of the legends of the World Football Phone. In fact, one of our earliest Brazil shirt names, Andrew the Gent. This is from Lewis in South Korea. I'm going to have to be quick because we're running out of time. I've been following the Under-20 World Cup in South Korea and even witnessed the first horseman of the apocalypse when I watched England win a quarter-final and then the semi. However, there's been an issue here after Uruguay's Under-20 Valverde, who plays for Real, celebrated a penalty by pulling his eyes back. Many Koreans have taken it as a racial gesture, but the player has apologized and claimed he was dedicating it to a friend. Ezekiel Lavezzi also did the same thing when being unveiled as a player for Hebei Fortune in China. Safe to say he was also obliged to apologize after the Chinese fans didn't take to it kindly. I want to ask about the South American view of Asia. Is there a culture of racism towards the East, hateful or derogatory, or is it just a case of racial ignorance from these two players who genuinely thought it wouldn't be a big deal?
I think it's more insensitivity and ignorance than malicious. I don't think there's any malicious intent in it. I've seen it happen so many times in Brazil, where there is in fact a big Japanese community. São Paulo is the biggest Japanese community outside of Japan, but I've seen it so many times in Brazil, and I always think, my God, you can't do that. But there isn't that awareness, and I'm sure, Dotton, you remember the casual racism that there was in England in the 70s, which often wasn't malicious. It was just ignorance and insensitivity, and I think that's where probably a lot of South Americans are with Asia.
Sorry.
They did that to me. The other day I travelled to Oman, and apparently it's really amazing to camp under the stars, so we decided to go out there just for a few days. And when I arrived at the airport, they looked at me and they were like, they were like really intrigued as to where I was from, and they did that gesture to me because they thought that I looked like I hail from Indonesia or Korea or somewhere like that. And that's exactly what they did. But they thought of it as something like as in it's a nice thing. They were like, "Oh, your eyes are like that," and I didn't think they realized that it was almost a racist gesture, you know.
You save your best stories till the end, don't you? No, I don't mean best as in, it was a pleasant experience, not at all. But, the most profound stories, maybe.
Well,
to the end.
It's only because it happened to me. I was like, whoa, what are you doing?
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, I realised I couldn't sing any of the words, but what Tim says about the 70s is absolutely right. And I didn't know I was being racist at the time, but I was singing some nonsense. Anyway, let's just leave it at that. Guys, thank you very much, both to Mina and to Tim, and to all your calls as well.
On digital and online.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
bbc.co.uk/5live.